Great. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. Good morning from me. I'm Benita Lucas, co-founder of Data Changemakers, based in Toronto, Canada. And I know many of you are joining from around the world for this exciting kickoff with the Changemakers Institute. I love the name of their organization, very similar to us, all about making change. This is actually a very unique project. First time we're looking at plant-based, the impact of plant-based on the environment. So I think that's pretty exciting and definitely a very, very important topic in today's world. Just going to share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So today's a kickoff, November 6th. Just wanted to walk you through the agenda. Okay, why am I not being able to? Oh, there we go. Just briefed a little bit about Data Changemakers. We're a fairly new organization, however, built off the legacy of Viz for Social Good. So both myself and Frederick Ferry, who could not join today as it's midnight in Australia, we were running Viz for Social Good, and earlier this year, Viz for Social Good had decided to discontinue operations. So we both wanted to keep the mission going about how much data can be used to drive change. And so we founded Data Changemakers of April this year and been very successful so far. We've already run 2 projects. We're on our 3rd one, and we've got many organizations knocking at our door wanting to work with us. I mean, ideally, we'd like for every mission-driven organizations to really be able to drive change by using data and analytics. And Nick, I'm going to turn it over to you for introductions. So I would like to welcome both Nicholas Carter and TJ Waterfall from Game Changers Institute. I think this was a very fortunate referral that somebody made to us, and we got on a call a couple of months ago with Nick and AK, and it was just such an inspirational conversation on both sides. So we really just got the ball rolling on getting a project started. Nick, I don't know if you want to just talk, if you have any slides, just let me know. I can
That's okay. I mean, I'll just briefly introduce myself and TJ just for the purpose of time. But yeah, hi everyone. My name is Nicholas Carter. Nick is good for short. I am the Director of Environmental Science for the Game Changers Institute. And just for context on what TJ and I work on, TJ is the Director of Nutrition for our team. And we work on a number of things behind the scenes related to studies on this topic about food and environment and food and health. Of course, we're interested in this ecological footprint calculator because we've seen that there is some out there accessible to others, but we feel like this one could be could stand out and could be unique. Yeah, I mean, the Game Changers Institute has a film behind it as well, and lots of other projects too. Yeah, I'm happy to share some more as we go on further in this call. Do you want me to share anything else, Vanita, now, or I'll let you go through the agenda here and then we can chat more? I think you're on mute.
So with today's agenda, so we will hear a little bit more about the Game Changers and the project ahead, and also our project process for the data change makers typically that we follow, which is that 4 to 6 week cycle. And we will learn more about the data. And I also have our impact champion, Jenna, on the call as well. So she'll walk through the data. And again, this is a very unique project. So it may not be the way that typically we've run our projects. So there'll be a little bit more explanation on the data. And then really just talk about the project process and answer any questions that you have. And also would like to thank some of our data change makers colleagues for joining. I think I see Sarah on the line and Dennis as well, and Impact Champion. So thank you for joining. Okay. So our typical project is very fast. We find lengthy projects, people just end up starting to work on it on the last week anyway. So today we will have the kickoff, and and as you know, on the website you have all the information related to the project. We encourage everyone to use Slack for collaboration. So if you haven't joined our Slack channel, project collaboration, happy to share the link. So essentially, Slack is our main communication tool. What's great about it is we will both have our charity sponsors, so Nick and TJ, whoever you, or unless you both want to be on, helping to answer questions about the data or the organization. What's really amazing about Slack is it's not just back and forth, it's the volunteers collaborating with each other. So as one volunteer looks at the data, they will find some anomalies or hey, what do you guys think about this? And everyone just jumps on and helps out each other. So it's just amazing to see the community come together working on this project. We've also found by using Slack and as the volunteers go through the data, our charity partners was also start making them think about the way the data is structured or how it's captured at the front end. So we're able to, point out different data quality, issues and gaps as well that helps with data capture or further analytics. And our deadline for submission is December 4th. So you have plenty of time to work and collaborate. Again, typically volunteers work on their own, but if you do want to partner with someone else or bring colleagues from wherever you work to partner on it as well, you can do one joint submission. There's a Google form for the submission, so please submit. And yeah, December 4th is a deadline. I think sometimes there's a bit of a grace period, a few hours, only because December 4th around the world means different to different people. So with time zones. And we will give Nick and TJ a week. They are going to go through all the submissions, provide some feedback, and then, choose. I know this becomes very hard. Everyone always tells us it was really hard to pick the top 3. This isn't necessarily a contest. But it's also about just finding the right visuals that was most impactful to you. And it's interesting because sometimes, we have a lot of a whole different skill breadth of volunteers. We have folks that are coming in that are brand new who are trying to learn a tool. We have seasoned data professionals. And we find that sometimes the charity ends up picking something that they thought was very impactful from a beginner. So I would not be discouraged in terms of, oh, I'm not good enough or having imposter syndrome. Just go for it, because it's all about the impact that your visualization is providing, and in this case, the echo calculator. So it's not necessarily about your technical strength as well. It's about how you combine your thinking of data, the visual as well as the impact. And then typically post-project, we start to work with the charity on what they'd like to do in terms of operationalizing the data, the visuals, or sometimes the volunteers will continue working. So that's as well, we continue that cycle with the organization. So, and also this is going to be our last project for 2025. We will be winding down, like most charities start winding down after December and just need that break and time to sort of reset for next year. So it's pretty exciting as well that we'll be ending the year off with this excellent project. Oops. Okay, so Nick, I think, did you want to talk more about your organization? I think I would turn it over to Jen as well to talk about some of the details around the project page and the data itself. So before that, just let me know if there's anything else that you want to talk about.
That's okay, pretty straightforward. But I could speak a little bit to the backend data Excel that was attached to the project when that time comes.
Okay, fair enough. So Jenna, can I pass it over to you then?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Gina Falzon, and I am a data visor, information designer, and impact champion with Data Changemakers, which has been a wonderful experience. And Recently, I've taken more of a role of the pre-prep of the data, especially in this case, because we were given a really outstanding and robust Google Sheets or Excel spreadsheet that contains a myriad of different data points, both raw and calculated. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain that by sharing my screen a little bit here. So let me share the actual file. Okay, can everybody see my screen? I'm going to assume.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a download. This is the Google Sheets, the Microsoft Excel version of the Google Sheets file that was uploaded. And I'm just going to shrink it down a little bit so we can see the entire thing. And what this basically is a series of sheets that contain raw data. Okay, and the raw data is here in the data source tab. And containing data that come from a various number of sources concerning the amount of greenhouse gases, for example, produced per year by red meat for 11 different food groups, a number of different parameters, water use, land use, eutrophication, acidification, et cetera, that are then used in this top level calculator sheet to give us sort of challenge KPIs and progress KPIs, as I would call them. So the idea here behind this spreadsheet is that we are able to put in two user inputs, one of which is the number of people perhaps that we might be considered to take on a plant-based diet shift, and then the percentage of their diet that would then be shifted to plant-based forms. So for example, I'm going to start at a baseline of 0. Okay, so let's just say these are user inputs. If nobody were to eat this million people, it doesn't matter about the number of people quite yet, but I'll just make this 1. Is it really? Oh, I guess it does kind of matter. Okay, so let's say a million. A million people undertake 0 plant-based shifting, and you can see here that the total impact of greenhouse gas releases, water usage, land usage are all of these, obscenely high numbers, as well as animals slaughtered and so on and so forth. So if we were to input, say, 65 for 65% of the shift of the diet that would go into a plant-based form, you would see that these numbers would all decrease by 65%. But what's really interesting is that now we have calculations that will give us an estimate of the greenhouse gases that are saved per person per year. Okay, so all of these items are per person per year. And they all are derived mostly from the data source. Okay, so mostly from the raw data here is delivering the bulk of those calculations. There are a couple. Does anyone have any questions, first of all, about how this calculator generally works? I used red meat as an example, 65% as my input for plant-based shift in percentages and a million for number of people. Does anyone have any questions so far about how that works? If so, I'll look in the chat, but I don't see anybody. Okay, I will move on then. So we do see the shifts that are happening, and so let me explain a little bit about how these formulas are derived. Okay, what you see here is you have, again, the data source. We have some more sort of cryptic numbers like a compensation factor, which I'll explain in a minute, which is factored into a lot of the calculations, as well as an adjusted consumption. Okay, and so these figures here are explained in plain language in, let's see, I'm going to switch my screen for a second. I would like to stop sharing for a minute, and I'm going to show you where we're at with let's see, I'm going to share here. Give me just a second. What I want to show you is the information that we're providing you in the data source. So when you go to look in the data, all of the calculations that are used to derive those high-level numbers in the calculator are described in real language here. So, for example, the total GHG impact is simply the GHG, the greenhouse gases, in the form of carbon dioxide equivalent, times the number of people, times the adjusted consumption. Now, this is an awful lot to calculate to reproduce this spreadsheet in a data visualization tool like Tableau or BI. So what Chris McClellan and I have done, respectively, as to pre-build these calculations for you in a Tableau sheet, which was just what Chris did. And in my case, I used Power BI because that's where my core competency is. And so this sheet, in fact, gives you all of the DAX figures that calculate all those measures. Now, if you want to use a different tool to calculate them, I've simply done the best I could to provide you with a plain language idea of what these actual measurements are derived from. However, it's still pretty simple to actually go into the data itself and look into the Excel spreadsheet for the formulas that are used there. But pretty much it's boiled down, it's distilled into this position here. I don't know how many people will be using Power BI or Tableau, but Chris and I have both posted ready-made sheets. I'm going to actually stop sharing one more time so I can show you mine in Power BI, basically reproducing the same calculator. The same calculator that is appearing in the Google Sheet, or if you download it into the Excel spreadsheet. So again, this is my Power BI. I haven't done any visualization yet. The visualization could then be applied on top of this. So I want to do a plant-based shift of, say, 65%, but I really want to do it over a much larger number of people. So let's say roughly 5 million people, and I'm using slides for this. And you can see that the values change, and that can then be used to drive visualizations going forward. Now, in the event of some of the calculations that are used that are sort of the intermediate calculations, like the adjusted consumption or the compensation value, I do have explanations on that I can then post. I will post that in the Slack channel. It's really not terribly important for your visualization reasons, just more for anybody's general understanding. I found it useful, especially in envisioning why these numbers were the way they were. So essentially, that is the data. Again, I just want to point out that the raw data, which is the second sheet in the Google Sheet, is the actual data that everything is based upon. And the formulas are on top of that in the calculator sheet. Also, the last thing I want to share is that much information is shared in the third sheet of the original data file called data. It's more of like a metadata. And this is going to give you a lot of information about some of the more obscure or less clear, less obvious data points or data sources for some of these points that we're getting here. So I just wanted to point that out, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So I will stop sharing here. Does anybody have any questions? Let's see about the data so far. Project. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Jean. I think it's great that you've been able to sort of make sense of the data behind the scenes. I know, Nick, when we first met, you had talked about, just having looked around at different calculators, none of them were really to your liking. So just curious in terms of just the volunteers could hear, like, what is it that really will just make this, out of the park?
Yeah, first of all, thanks so much, Gina, for that explanation. I think that was wonderful. And anytime anyone has any questions about the data explainer and references we put down there, I mean, we did our best to explain each number. The backend data source is actually relatively simple. It's based on a couple studies, one out of Oxford University from Joseph Poor, who was the person who recommended data change makers. And Yeah, and then there's a few other ones that are based on a few different studies, like the compensation factor and the biodiversity one, which is science that we really honestly need more of. As in the future, if we can update that, great. But we have our work shown in that third tab. Yeah, and I mean, in terms of making this relevant to the broader ecological footprints that are available out there. I think a big problem with ecological footprints is it makes it very much about one single person and an individual. And I think there's some value in that, but really what we want to show is more systems-wide change. That's why we can change that amount of people. So say there's like an organization that has 1,000 people and they're offering 50% more plant-based at their cafeteria, and they can monitor that that has been chosen X amount of times. We want to be able to visualize that with the kind of percent change of more plant-based and the number of people, which I think takes that kind of individual responsibility and shows both the individual and the systemic change. And so I think that's one kind of philosophy behind the very simple number of people and the slider. And then the next philosophy that we kind of have behind this that I don't think is done well with ecological footprint calculators is making sense of the numbers. So we get the final amount based on, say, 1 million people going 50% plant-based. And it says 1 gigatons of CO2. Well, what does that mean? What is that context for the everyday person to understand? So I think how we want to hopefully visualize this is making comparisons to what people are able to associate a number to. So instead of just that number, we want to say, okay, well, this is equivalent to taking 1 million cars off the road, or this is equivalent in land of all of Texas, or this is equivalent land in 1,000 football fields. Or if it's water, it's like this is equivalent to an hour of flow of Niagara Falls, and get creative with that visualization, because I think that's what really makes these numbers matter, and that's what will help people understand the potential of this shift. And we also don't want it to be kind of an all or nothing thing, but showing how these little changes do make a difference. And yeah, I think those are the main philosophies behind, why we wanted to do this.
Can I add something just quickly about the visualization? Which is that you're absolutely spot on, Nick. I don't think any of the existing calculators do that very well at all. So it just makes it relevant and just much easier to visualize. But I think we discussed that it might be useful because obviously the visualization of one person shifting even 100% plant-based, it's going to be very different in terms of what you'll be able to use as that visualization for 1 million people doing it. So while, using the Niagara Falls example, if one person switched to plant-based, it'll be like a split second of Niagara Falls. So becomes less relevant. So I think we're envisioning there being like a cliff edge, or maybe 2 or 3 steps up. So maybe if you're doing it for an individual person, or even up to 10 or 100, we'll have to see where it lands. But for that, it could be how many showers, like the equivalent of how many showers worth of water you've saved. But then obviously that becomes less relevant when you're talking about 1 million people. So using something like Olympic-sized swimming pools then would be more relevant. So and the same goes for greenhouse gas emissions and land use. So yeah, I imagine there's a cutoff point where after you reach a certain number of people, whether that's 10 or 100, then it switches to a slightly different visualization metric. And then again, once you get to really, 6-figure numbers.
Yeah, we did give some examples of that. I think in one of the documents that is on that link that Benita put in the chat. But if not, we can also provide more, and always open to suggestions or ideas anyone has. Yeah, there we go. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's probably down.
Okay, there's this one. You're able to see?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, this is all available in the document.
There we go.
Question on, do the volunteers have sort of creative license to come up with other types of visuals? I think, but obviously the math behind it will have to make sense, and also at the end of the day be validated by yourself, right? In terms of, you know,
course.
maybe, okay, so it could be Niagara Falls, it could be like Ontario or whatever else. But okay, so then I think if they're going to go and find out some other type of visuals, then you'll want to know then the sort of where the data source behind that they chose, just to make sure that you have a trusted visual.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. You know, we do have volunteers from around the world, and so I actually live an hour away from Niagara Falls, so know exactly what that looks like. But many people might choose to use some landmarks in their own country, so that's why I was asking about that.
Of course, yeah, and please go ahead, yeah, and we can also double check different things to help out if there's a question about maybe a certain data source of a certain landmark you want to use that you want us to take a look at. We can do that, no problem. And to be clear, Game Changers Institute, I mean, it's a global effort. There's work that the Institute has done all around the world. So certainly some things do seem a little bit American focused, but the network and the work is very much global.
Yeah, and we're very open to ideas in terms of visualization. You guys might come up with way better ideas than we've had. Well, one thought that I did have was potentially using like aviation for the greenhouse gas emissions, because I think a lot of people, it can be a misled criticism of plant-based diets that if you rely on plant-based diets, then you tend to import more foods. But the greenhouse gas emissions of the transport of food is a fraction of the greenhouse emissions of the production of food, especially meat and other animal-derived products. So that could be a really interesting one to use, like aviation time, not necessarily for the whole, like an individual passenger aviation time, or once you get into huge numbers of people, then it could be for a whole jet, aeroplane or something. Yeah, it's just throwing some ideas out there, but that could be an interesting one.
For the the animals' lives saved, that's an interesting one, and especially when something like fish is included. I did just a communications post last week where it showed in 40 seconds the amount of fish that were fished around the world was equivalent to the human population of Montreal. So that's just in 40 seconds. So like the numbers of these things are really hard to grasp, but yeah, I mean, most people don't know what a billion even means or looks like. So I think the better we can make it personal and visualized, the more impactful that result will be.
I think there's a question in the chat, but maybe TJ, you answered that already. Should we take audience into mind for these visualization? Use examples that would make sense to global audience or Western audience?
I think a global audience would be ideal. Yeah, I think that's what we should be focusing on.
Yeah. And
Great.
cities is a great one. You just touched on that, Nick, but I think that really helps visualize. Once you get into the larger numbers, it's not just about population, but it could be how much greenhouse gas emissions the whole city of, I don't know, New Delhi uses in a day or something. So I'd say it could be for water use as well. Not so much for land, but well, I guess you could use the for land as well. Yeah, but yeah, I think cities could be quite useful.
One thing about using some Western specific examples is because the majority of impacts do come from kind of global rich countries. So if we're able to kind of visualize something that people have already kind of changed their awareness on, whether it's flight like TJ mentioned, but also certain countries or cities, or even coal plants. Like people understand that coal is a very dirty form of energy, but they might not realize that you can save the equivalent amount of emissions with a certain amount of shifting plant-based. So yeah, I think making those comparisons to things that people have already kind of well understood is an important thing to do.
Does anyone have any other questions?
I have another question. Are you hoping for this to be a certain look or feel or even size? Like, is it embedding in a website? You want it to be narrow and not wide, or, you know what I mean?
That's a really good question.
Uh,
I mean, I think we pictured it both. We pictured it both ability to have it through like an app mobile, but also embedded in our website. So perhaps that's not the best answer for designing it, but our idea is to get this out to widely for whoever and however someone wants to use it.
And Sarah, we had an initial conversation with Nick, talked about a phase 2, where then the chosen design, then we'd go on and build something a little bit more robust that could
Okay.
fit as an app, as a server. But that's really phase 2. I think phase 1 is really to come up with the calculator that's the most impactful, that would resonate with the everyday person. So
Okay.
yeah, I wouldn't worry too much at this point about trying to fit all of that in. I think really just focus on the output.
And then with that, my follow-up would be, a lot of people will focus on design and making it look fancy, a wow factor. Would the focus here be more on like usability for an end user? Or both?
I
I
think it's
think you want the wow factor first,
Okay.
right? Like, but yeah, both. I think what we found and you Sarah, you've been one of the volunteers who've gone on to help Noise Solutions, right? So I think that's the second phase, is where then you really start looking at the usability, the audience. But initially I think it would be both. But again, I think in this case, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, you're really looking for a bit of that wow factor as well, right?
Yeah, I
Dennis?
think
Oh, go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say, yeah, it is both, but the wow factor is key. And I think the way in which we have like just the 2 sliders, just how much plant-based and how many people, I think that is like the ease of use that we want to provide people. And then based on that, they get wowed by the impact and the data that we have from it.
Dennis, you had a question?
Yeah, I might have missed this, but is there a particular audience that's you have in mind for this calculator? And the reason I ask is um depending on the audience, the calculator could look a little different, right? Like if it's policymakers, we are talking about big numbers, or city numbers, or country numbers. But if we're talking about individuals who are maybe just thinking about their family, the numbers, I mean, it could be like, okay, what does it mean for a family of 4, right? And so the calculator could look a little different in that case. So I'm just wondering, what do you have in mind, or if it's all, or both, or I don't know.
Again, it's a really good question. I mean, I think we see that in the kind of ecological footprint options people have, there's a lot for individuals. There's a lot for one person to go in there to see what their impact is. So while this may be used by individuals too, the idea is for this for people doing policy, people doing institutional changes, people that are trying to map out their ways in which they can be more environmentally friendly. And with I mean with companies, for example, there's a number of ways that companies are attempting right now to varying levels of success. But there's carbon offsets. There's ways in which you can try to offset some of your impacts, and those have had lots of issues. But what we want to show as well is like simply shifting availability of plant-based foods and making it more enticing and offering it more and helping people make individual changes. Then that as well is something that you can put against your efforts to becoming more environmentally friendly. So long way of answering. Just I think it is geared a bit more towards systemic changes that I don't think is well offered in ecological footprint calculators.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, great. Great question, Dennis. Just curious, has there been any, just playing devil's advocate, any anti-plant-based studies that would prove your numbers otherwise, or counter with other type of measures?
Yeah, a good question. I mean, there's lots of industry science out there, funded by the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, especially. The ways in which you can do that is very much narrow environmental accounting. So, say you're just looking at direct emissions from let's take cattle, for example, direct emissions from a certain area of land that's used to farm animals. If you don't factor in that that land used to be a forest before, or the deforestation was involved to even turn that into a cattle pasture, then you can make the numbers look a lot better. But if you factor in land and if you factor in water as well, both kind of rainwater and irrigation, yeah, you can make these numbers look a lot different. So yeah, there's definitely studies out there that will show. But I think um, our goal with this is to use the most consensus meta-analyses. So, I mean, most of this data is based off work from Joseph Poor and Thomas Nemechek, which is data from 119 countries, representing about 90% of foods that are eaten. Yeah, I mean, it's a meta-analysis of a huge body of research, and honestly, it's probably a little bit conservative too. So, I mean, we could use higher numbers across the board here, but it was not necessary. We just wanted to use the most kind of scientifically robust numbers to do that.
Great. So we become plant-based, save water so that it could run all the AI machines, right? Is that why we're
I mean, interestingly, I saw yesterday there's a big data center going in Ontario, right in Canada, and this is a massive one. But an industrial dairy farm still uses more water. Not that both don't matter; they both matter. But you know, putting the numbers in context is really important too.
Just going back to the sort of visualization from Dennis's question as well. I think the simplicity of it is really key, and that's just by design because we've only got 2 sliders. But also, yeah, maybe bearing that in mind with the visuals could be useful as well, because if we're geared towards both the individual and policymakers, but if the policymakers is a real sort of driver for what we're doing, then we just want it to look sort of as clean and almost kind of scientific, if that can be portrayed in the sort of visual, I guess, like sort of with our website, for example, the Game Changers movie and the Game Changers Institute website, you can see that we tend to use sort of bold colors, sort of dark grays are featured quite heavily as well. So I don't know, that's just something to bear in mind. Just kind of the simplicity of it, I think could speak a lot.
And there's another question about, do you have any branding, colors, logos, graphics you want us to stick to, or are you open to anything?
I mean, what TJ said, I think is yeah, spot on with what we're using with the GameChangersInstitute.com. I think TJ, you even have like a kit that might be helpful to share. What do you think?
Yeah, I should be able to dig that up. Yeah, with sort of colors that we tend to use and fonts. I know Nor'Wester is featured heavily as a font. So yeah, I could find that and send it over. There's a few like tones of green that we use alongside the like dark grays, which I don't know, it seems to go quite well. So we can send that. I don't think it's necessarily a hard and fast rule that it has to fit in with that, but it could be used as a basis, as a starting point for sure.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. And then again, when we go on to do the phase 2 build, that's where you're really going to hone in on some of those requirements and make the changes as well, right? So yes, a recording of this meeting will be posted. We will post that on the Slack channel. So typically, because you know, we get a lot of registrations, but not everybody can join, and or people have work, or it's just different time of day. The recordings are very helpful, and many tend to go back and watch the recording as well, just to get some clarity on some of the discussions. All right, and Nick and TJ, have you been able to join the Slack channel? Any issues? Okay, so you're on there. Excellent. Awesome. All right. Well, I think we can wrap this up and give everybody 15 minutes. But thank you all for joining. Thank you for your questions. Gina, excellent work. And Chris as well. I know Chris is in Australia, so it's midnight for him as well. But thank you to both of you for really jumpstarting the data, the piece with both Tableau and Power BI. So I think that's a great thing that for the volunteers to start using. And Nick, TJ, thank you so much for collaborating with us on this project. We're looking forward to the next 4 to 5 weeks. It should be pretty exciting.
Great. Thanks so much, everyone.
Excellent. Great.
Everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good day or good
Thank
night, everyone.
you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hello.